Hello, everyone. Welcome to Eat by Design. This is our nutrition workshop for patients. I can't state strongly enough the importance of making the right food choices as you go through this process of neurostructural restoration. As we're making corrections to your spine, using nutrition to help turn down the inflammation in your body will really speed your healing process. So we usually do this workshop live, and we give you lots of great tasting food to eat and to sample with a bunch of recipes. Unfortunately, if you're watching the webinar, you're not going to get the full experience, but you at least get the content. At the end, if you would like the recipes that we sample, then just reply to me in an email and request it. I'll send you a PDF that has the manual from the workshop and all the recipes in it. Let's get started. I want to start by talking tonight about let's see if I can get this to advance. There we go. Talking about the current state of health. We're going to use our neighbors to the south as an example here. I'm going to pick on them because I don't have a graphic like this for Canada. So if you look at this graph, all the states are outlined, and there are two different colors. There's a light blue and a dark blue. The light blue represents states where the population of people who are obese in 1990, so the year 1990 is when this graph was first made, with a BMI of 30 or more, or a 5'4" person who's over 30 pounds. So the light blue states have 10% of their population or less that were obese, and the darker blue states, most of them, there's about 3/4 of them there, 10 to 14% of their population in 1990 were obese. So they use 1990 because that's when the fat-free craze was in full swing, right? Through the late 70s into the 80s, fat was vilified, so we started taking fat out of our foods, and then they wanted to track obesity trends as we made these nutritional changes in North America to fat-free. Now, let me just state that if you take fat out of foods that normally contain fat, the food tastes like cardboard. So what do you think they have to add to the food in order to make it palatable when they take the fat out? Sugar. So you notice that a lot of these fat-free foods are chock-a-block full of sugar. And so we'll start looking at the obesity trend starting in 1990 when this fat-free craze was in full swing. So the next graph is going to be 1993. So look, we've added a whole new color. That's that dark blue there, that navy blue. So now in those states, 15 to 19% of their populations are obese. 1994, more and more dark blue states. 1995, same thing. And all of a sudden in 1998, we've got this beige category. We have a whole new category that's greater than 20% of the population in these 7 or 8 states here are obese. And 1999, wow, half the country or more probably, more than 20% of the population obese. 2000, oh, here we've got a red, one of those southern states, all their fried foods. But that means that more than 25% of the population in that state now in 2001 are obese. We've got more states there in 2002, 2003. And it's expanding. The red is expanding more and more. Oh, now we've got another dark red category, which means that more than 30% of the population of those states are obese in 2005, 2006. All of a sudden, the whole country's painted red, where almost the entire country, the populations, 25% or more of the populations in 2007 are considered obese. And it's just risen from there. Now, I show you that graph to have you understand that despite this fat-free craze, through that whole fat-free time in our nutrition, obesity levels were on the rise. And the same stats occurred in Canada to be comparable to the US. So does fat-free work? No. We're going to talk about that a lot tonight. You need fat. We need lots of fat. Probably most of us need more fat in our diets. We just need the right kinds of fats and not the bad fats. And we'll clarify that tonight too. So our approach at Elevate Chiropractic and our fundamental premise is we believe that every human being is designed to be extraordinary. So that raises the question, you might say, Doc, okay, well then how come some people get so sick? Well, it's not for lack of information, because everyone's got a library card or a Google search bar, and probably a whole bunch of these nutrition books on your shelf. It's unusual that people wouldn't have nutrition books or access to nutrition information in this day and age. And despite free access to all this information, are people eating better or worse? Are they getting healthier or more sick? Well, clearly people are getting sicker and sicker. So it's not a lack of information. I love this formula, and this is going to be an overview of our evening tonight. I would say the formula for success is that the correct philosophy with respect to your health, with congruent action and adequate time, will allow you to achieve extraordinary results. Now, we've got lots of information. A lot of people with willpower will take action. Where I see patients time and time again faltering in this equation is with time, right? Stuff takes time. People come into the office and they want their health problems solved in 2 to 3 weeks. Well, would you go to the gym and say to a personal trainer, hey, I would like to have a 6-pack abs and huge biceps, and I want to come in 4 or 5 times and have those biceps and those 6-pack abs? There's no chance. People understand that physical change in their muscles takes time. Well, if we're talking about correcting an underlying problem in your neuromuscular skeletal structure, there's no way that's happening in a matter of weeks. It's going to be months and many times years. So I would encourage you to understand that this process of neurostructural restoration is one that you'll have to be consistent with over time. So if you had a flower at home that was wilting and drooping, what are the first things that you would do for that flower? Well, obviously, you'd put it in the window, you might water it, you might put some fertilizer in the soil, but we understand that this flower has some requirements in order to be healthy. But if we have a child who is sick or unwell, do we think, I wonder if that kid needs to eat better. I wonder if I need to get them more active. Right? You may have those thoughts, but your immediate first thought usually with a child is going to be, what do they eat? Or what's wrong with them? Or do we need to give them something from the outside in order to try and make them better? Do they need Advil? Do they need Tylenol? Do they need Gravol? Those sorts of things. I want to encourage you tonight to consider that people, like that plant, have genetic requirements in order to have optimal expression of health. There is overwhelming evidence that illness and disease are experienced from living incongruently with our genetic requirements for life. So let's talk about epigenetics. Have you heard of this word, epigenetics? Well, epigenetics is the science of how your lifestyle, like the choices you make day in and day out, will cause different genetic expressions in your life. So a great example, the way to think of this is, if I gave 2 different people the exact same book. So let's say we had a book on nutrition or a book on exercise, any book that you like. It was a book of information, and I gave 2 different people this book, and I gave one a blue highlighter and one a yellow highlighter. And I let those people read through the book and highlight all the stuff that they found to them that was important. And when they'd gone through the whole book and done all their highlighting, if I collected the books from both of them, so the books are identical. The book is the same. It's being published the same. All the words in the book are the same. But do you think the parts that are highlighted would be the same? Well, no. Some people would see different things as important. So even though the content is the same, the books would, as far as the highlighting, would look very, very different in the end. That's epigenetics. You can take 2 identical twins, and if they have different habits and lifestyle choices, the expression of their genetics is going to be very, very different, right? If one lifts weights and the other sits on the couch, one is going to have muscles and the other is going to get overweight. So if one has high stress, they're going to be aging prematurely. If they're a male, they'll probably have hair loss. If they're low stress, they would probably look healthier and be more energetic. But despite the fact that genetic twins have identical genetic code, they would have different expressions of their health based on their choices. And that's what epigenetics means. So how do lifestyle factors affect our health? Well, we can have physical, chemical, and emotional influencers, outside influencers that will cause us to express our genetics differently. Well, what do our genes expect? Our genes will expect that we have a positive, healthy, optimistic mindset. You know, our posture, the way we stand, can even influence our hormonal levels, which is really interesting. So I think our Think by Design workshop that we'll do in a couple times a year, I think you'll really appreciate that. It talks a lot about how your thought processes can affect your life, your health, and your physiology. Power by Design, so that's the chiropractic portion. The fundamental part of your health is that your brain is the master controller, and it communicates with every single cell in your body through your spinal cord and your peripheral nerves. So having a properly functioning and aligned spine will allow your brain to communicate and control all the processes of your body to a greater degree. Movement is critical, so we talk at our Move by Design workshop about movement patterns and proper exercise. And of course, tonight we're talking about fueling your body in Eat by Design. And Eat by Design is simply a strategy to fulfill our requirements for fuel based on what, as humans, we are best adapted to, what are the best nutrient-dense foods with the least amount of toxicity, and what foods ultimately move us toward a better expression of our current design. So a couple key things out of there. One would be nutrient density and least amount of toxicity. So we're going to talk a lot about those two things tonight. If we're going to eat things, we want things that are nutrient dense, right? So nutrient density, if you look at foods like the beige foods, cereals, breads, bagels, muffins, these things are very nutrient void. They're not dense at all. They have very few nutrients for a lot of calories. They're like this balloon. This balloon takes up a lot of space, but it doesn't weigh very much. There's not much stuff in it. This is like your cereals and your breads and your pastas. A lot of calories, a lot of bulk for very few, almost no nutrients. Whereas the hockey puck, this would be smaller and more dense. This would be a high dense food. So if you look at grass-fed steak, chicken breast, those types of foods, green leafy vegetables are very, very nutrient dense and tend to be very anti-inflammatory. So one thing we encourage people to do is to eat food as close to the state as it appears in nature. Right? So that leads me to our first point here that is probably the most important thing I'm going to say for this entire webinar, is that if you do nothing else, if you ignore everything else we talk about with respect to your nutrition, eat real food first. If you only did that, your health would dramatically change in a very short period of time. So how many ingredients does real food have? Well, it has one, right? Apples contain apple. Broccoli, its ingredients are broccoli. So if just eat food, real food, as close to its state in nature. Number two, I would say eat protein with every meal. Most of our North American, our Western diet is full of grain-based foods. So all the beige foods, which are like the balloon, they're very, very void of nutrients. They are not nutrient dense at all. Proteins, most of our protein sources have high nutrient density. So every single meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, should have protein as the centerpiece. How much protein? Well, if you look at the palm of your hand, not without your fingers and thumb, just the palm of your hand, that's about the size of your protein that you should eat with every meal. That meal should be surrounded with as many vegetables as you could possibly want. And also you've got to build in some healthy fats. So you can drizzle your foods with olive oil, you can cook in butter, grass-fed butter or ghee, coconut oil, olive oil, avocados are a great source, but add some healthy fats. So every meal should have protein as the center with a ton of vegetables and some healthy fats. And I would really, really urge you to reduce your grains. Eliminate those simple carbohydrates. All those beige foods that are grain-based are not providing very many nutrients for you at all. You don't need them, and they're adding empty calories, creating inflammation throughout your body. 3 reasons to make protein a major part of your diet. It raises your metabolism, so it has 3 times the thermic effect of other foods. It takes a lot of work to digest proteins, so it raises your metabolism and you burn lots of calories by digesting your proteins. It satisfies your appetite, so it helps you with satiety signals, the signals that tell you, hey, I'm full, I got all the nutrients I need, I'm done. Whereas your beige foods, your carbohydrate-based foods, do not signal the satiety. And in fact, because they're so nutrient void, even though you eat them and get lots of calories, your brain still senses that you don't have enough nutrients, so it'll keep sending hunger signals to make you eat more because you've eaten foods that are void of nutrients. Your body needs a certain amount of vitamins and minerals each day, and it's going to ask you to consume things until you get adequate nutrients to fuel your body. And if you're eating nutrient void foods, you're going to eat way too many calories. That's where we gain weight. Protein will help improve your insulin sensitivity too. But with respect to protein, it's important to understand that we are what we eats. So cows, for example, cows were made to graze, walk around, and eat all sorts of different kinds of clovers and grass, just to walk through a pasture grazing along all these grasses. And yet a traditionally raised cattle in North America, if you look at the fields that they're in, it'll be a very small field. There won't be a blade of grass anywhere. And they're hustled up to the feeding trough in a high grain, force-fed environment. Well, grains tend to make people sick from the inflammation. Grains make cattle sick. So these, when the traditionally raised cattle, have to be slaughtered at about 14 months. They get big really quickly, so they get obese and overweight at a very young age. And if they're not slaughtered around 14 months or so, if they're left to live longer, they'll get very, very sick. So they have to harvest these animals at a very young age because the grains make them sick. If you take the fat content of steak or ground beef from a grass-fed animal, it is super high in omega-3 fats. That's the good heart-healthy fats that turn down inflammation and are good for the heart. That, you know, they talk about fish oils. Well, those omega-3s are in very, very high concentration in grass-fed cattle, because the cattle get the omega-3 out of the grasses, processes it into their fats inside their proteins, and then we eat those. So grass-fed meats can be super, super healthy, very lean, but also the fats they do have will be super high in omega-3. And we want to focus on those omega-3 heart-healthy fats. So the hierarchy principle says that the further you eat from what we were designed to eat, the less results you're going to get. If you have a limited budget or limited inclination, finances are in order, and you're thinking about your nutrition, wondering where you should allocate your precious resources, I would say that your meats would be top priority. Stay away from the traditional supermarket meats and begin to get free-range chicken, pastured porks if you like pork, and most importantly, grass-fed only beef. It's going to cost you a little more, but it's going to be so worth it. Okay, wild fish are excellent sources of good fats and high quality protein. They've got lots more vitamin D. They're high in omega-3, that heart healthy anti-inflammatory fats. You must make sure that you have wild caught fish. If you're eating farmed fish, they're fed grains. And I usually ask the question, as a fish is swimming along in its normal habitat, when would it ever naturally encounter a cob of corn? Well, it never would. And yet when they're farmed, they're fed corn and lots of other grains. Makes the fish really unhealthy. Don't eat the farm fish. You got to get wild caught fish. You can increase your protein by consuming more free range poultries, pastured pork, lamb, other sort of organ meats if you like, wild game. But eat healthy animals that are free range, eating their own by design diet. Eat your vegetables. No bag limit on vegetables. The more vegetables you consume, the more vitamins and minerals you're going to get. It's almost impossible to overeat on vegetables, right? Like, how many peppers could you eat before your body says, hey, stop eating? They are chock-a-block full of vitamins and minerals, nutrients that we need. So, really no bag limit on vegetables. Choose organic, local, and seasonal as much as you can. Organic vegetables have more nutrients and fewer chemicals than your conventionally raised vegetables. You should know that nutrient content begins to deteriorate, certainly never rises, after your vegetables are harvested. So it may make sense in Canada in the winter to choose frozen vegetables as opposed to fresh vegetables, because a frozen vegetable will be picked somewhere in a warmer climate at its full ripeness. And it'll be processed right away. It'll be picked and processed, flash frozen, and it'll be shipped frozen. So you'll get that vegetable that was picked when it was highest in its nutrient content, flash frozen with all that nutrient in there, and then shipped as a frozen food, as opposed to fresh vegetables in our supermarket that are on display in the produce section in our Canadian winters will have been picked way before they're ripe, far from ripe. And what happens is they have to be ripened in the truck in transit as they come from sometimes other continents. And so the nutrient content in those vegetables will be maxed out in an unripened state, so won't be nearly as high as a vegetable that's picked when it's ripened. So in the winter, flash frozen. In the summer, fresh, local, and organic is way better. Again, we're talking about the hierarchy principle, right? This will be number 2 on the priority of your spending your precious resources, your money and time. Spend money on local and organic vegetables, but you don't need to buy all your vegetables organic because some of them can be harvested with very few sprays. So if you look at the Environmental Working Group's website, ewg.org, they give you a dirty dozen and a clean 15 list. So the clean 15 are a list of vegetables and fruit that you can purchase, the traditionally raised ones, because those vegetables are hardy on their own, and there's very few sprays and pesticides used to harvest those. So why would you use your money, extra money, to buy organics? For example, avocados are high on the clean 15 list. So you can buy just a regular supermarket avocado for about a quarter the price of an organic avocado, and you don't need to waste your money on the organic avocados because a traditionally raised, harvested avocado is not sprayed very much. It doesn't have many pesticides on it. At the other end of the spectrum would be something like maybe strawberries or spinach. You definitely should buy those organic because there's a lot of pesticides and things involved in them. So at ewg.org, you can get the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list and decide how you can most efficiently allocate your resources, spending money only where you need to. Speaking of avocados, one of the things we need to do is increase the quality fat intake. Most people, as they make these changes, don't work diligently enough at increasing their quality fat intake. Fat provides satiety, so it turns down your hunger signals. Fats are used in almost every single cell in our body. They surround our organs. They're a great fuel source. Every cell membrane is made of fats. We need lots and lots of healthy fat in our diet. Most people, when they're trying to lose weight, make the mistake of not eating enough fat. Fat is your friend as long as you're eating the right kinds of fat. Fat doesn't make you fat. Only bad, unhealthy fats make you fat. And the old news is that saturated fat will kill you. Well, no, that's not true. There are lots of healthy saturated fats. Bad saturated fats will kill you. Healthy saturated fats are really, really important for you. So I'm going to click through some of these because I want to really get to the crux of the matter. So some practical things for you. Another old news thing is that cholesterol is the devil. So cholesterol has been made a 4-letter word over the last few decades. And I have to tell you, there's a huge misunderstanding around cholesterol. Cholesterol is not the devil. Cholesterol is your friend. Cholesterol is such an important molecule in our bodies, and you require so much of it that your body has great processes to make cholesterol, and it makes tons of cholesterol. So much so that your body doesn't really absorb much of your dietary cholesterol at all. So if you're intaking a lot of cholesterol in the foods that you eat, your body says, I don't need that, just excrete it. You're not onboarding it or absorbing it hardly at all because your body says, I can make plenty of cholesterol, I need lots of it. And cholesterol is a big deal. It's required throughout the body. Brain cells, learning and memory. Cholesterol is the precursor to all steroid hormones. It's required to make vitamin D. All your cell membranes require cholesterol. Cholesterol is your friend, absolutely. So don't be fooled by these cholesterol-free or lower cholesterol type foods. Don't worry about your dietary cholesterol. We need to focus on bad saturated fats, but dietary cholesterol is not an issue. And eggs in the past have been the bad guy, but if you're eating eggs that are from free-range chickens that are just allowed to scratch in the dirt and do their thing, the protein is a great source of protein, and there's some healthy fats that are in the and cholesterol in the yolks of these. So don't worry about eggs. Bring eggs in as a part of your diet. Here's some top healthy fats here. Avocados are number one. I try and eat an avocado almost every day. Butter and ghee. Ghee is the butter fat that's separated from the protein. So even if people have an allergy to the protein in dairy, they can eat ghee because it's just the butter fat. Coconut oil is a great source. Extra virgin olive oil. Omega-3 from fish and also from free-range eggs and grass-fed beef. MCT oil, that's medium-chain triglyceride oil. We use it in bulletproof coffee. You can learn that on one of my videos. I teach you how to make bulletproof coffee. Send me an email if you want to see my recipe for that. But in the mornings, it's a great way to get some healthy fats in with your coffee in the morning. Full-fat dairy from good sources. And in moderation, nuts and seeds will provide some healthy fats too. So, so let's talk about grains for a bit. This is another old news thing here, is that grains are good for you. I talk about this a lot in office because over the years, people have been sort of indoctrinated or brainwashed into thinking that you've got to have your bread, you got fiber and protein and all these sources, but grains are not good for us. The case against grains, there are a couple things. We're not really adapted yet, most of us, some more so than others. Grains are not really a good source of anything. If you look at the nutrient content of this various types of breads as opposed to a very small portion of mixed vegetables, they pale in comparison. Vegetables are way more nutrient dense. Grains are like the balloon, very nutrient void. Grains are highly addictive because they're converted into sugar as soon as they touch your tongue. Salivary amylase in your saliva will begin to break down grains into simple sugars that are just like eating chocolate bars. So sugar is sugar, and it will raise the inflammatory response. Grains have undigestible proteins, and they have these things called phytates. Phytates are anti-nutrients that are found in grains, and what they do is they bind to other nutrients so that you can't absorb them, and then they're excreted. So, for example, a sandwich. You have your traditional sandwich that you might put on some vegetables and some cheese and some meats, and you might be thinking, okay, well, I'm getting the nutrients from these vegetables and meats and cheeses, yet the bread in your sandwich will contain anti-nutrients in the form of phytates that in your digestive tract will bind to some of the nutrients from your meat and cheese and vegetables and excrete them and make those nutrients bio-unavailable. So not only is the bread nutrient void, but it's actually going to rob the nutrients that you are ingesting from the healthy things like the meats and the vegetables and the cheeses so that you can't even absorb them. So they do have anti-nutrient properties. This just is a graph showing the nutrient density of grains, like in the form of breads, versus vegetables. If you look at a small portion, a cup of vegetables will give you 34 calories, and as opposed to a slice of white bread, or whole wheat, which would give you 85 calories for a fraction of the nutrients. Look at the fiber content, the protein content, and the different vitamins and minerals are much higher from the vegetables, and the calorie content is way lower. So the vegetables are much more nutrient dense, fiber dense, protein dense than any of the breads, even the ones that have been fortified. Okay, remove sugar from your diet. So here's the thing, sugar relates to cholesterol and heart disease. I'm going to park here for a minute so you can understand this. So we've been told that cholesterol is the enemy over years, and if our cholesterol levels are up, then we're probably going to be prescribed Lipitor, Crestor, or these chemicals, these drugs that bring down our cholesterol levels. Let me show you how cholesterol and inflammation and these levels really work in our body. So what happens is that we have this Western diet that is really, really high in simple carbohydrate and sugars. And we have this high blood glucose levels that are chronic. And when your blood glucose levels are high for long periods of time, it becomes very, very toxic. So your body must maintain a very narrow range of glucose. If you ever know anyone who's diabetic, if their sugar gets high, they take insulin. If their insulin gets high, they take sugar. They have to really balance this in a very fine level because high blood sugar is very, very toxic to us. So we have insulin that moves sugar in and out of the storage sites in our body to try and maintain a very narrow range of blood glucose that is healthy. So, and the reason that we need to do that is because sugar, blood glucose, high blood glucose levels are anti-inflammatory, are very, very damaging. So if we've got chronically high blood glucose levels circulating within our arteries, it's like a cheese grater on the inside of our arteries. It goes along and it inflames and irritates over time the insides of the arteries in our body. And our body senses this, and our body says, oh, I got all this damage on the insides of my arteries from this high blood glucose level from this diet that's high in carbohydrate and sugar, and it's creating damage on the insides of the arteries, and I better fix this. And it goes, I know exactly what to do to fix the damage to the insides of the artery walls. I've got this beautiful, silky smooth repair molecule that I make in abundance as I need it, and I can lay down this silky smooth, beautiful repairing molecule called cholesterol on the insides of those arteries to repair the damage that the sugar caused. And it does a very effective job. It's designed to be a short-term repair solution. And your body will lay down, put cholesterol into the blood so that it's laid down on the insides of the arteries to repair the damage caused by the high sugar. And the problem comes when we continue to keep our blood glucose elevated from our lousy diet that's high in carbohydrate and sugars. So more and more of this cholesterol needs to be laid down to repair the arteries that are damaged from the sugar. And then if the layer of cholesterol gets high enough, it creates turbulent blood flow, and it's a great spot for these things called plaques to be laid down. So mistakenly, we think that the high cholesterol is the problem that creates the plaques. Well, the high cholesterol is your body's way of trying to repair the damage that was done from high blood sugar. And instead of addressing our diet and reducing our blood glucose by changing the carbohydrate and sugar intake, we then take Crestor or Lipitor, which artificially does a good job at lowering our cholesterol levels, but it doesn't curb the inflammation and the damage that is still being done to the interior artery walls. And we end up having this chronic progressive cardiovascular damage. And what we really need to be doing is lowering our carbohydrate and sugar intake, and it will allow us to normalize our cholesterol levels. Something to think about next time you visit your GP and you want to reduce or get off your Lipitor or Crestor, or avoid taking them if you're not on them yet, because we can do these dietary changes that will effectively reduce your cholesterol levels. So, and sugar is sugar. I think this is an important understanding. These two slices of bread are going to be processed in your body almost exactly the same as this chocolate bar. The glycemic index is even not that different. As soon as this bread touches your tongue, it's broken down into its components, which are sugars. So juices, pops, never drink your sugar. Water is really the only thing we need to drink. And it's hidden in lots of places. So even fruits, pineapple will be very high in sugars. It'll also be nutrient dense. You get lots of nutrients with your pineapple. So if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to reestablish normal glucose levels, you may need to go through a time period where you're reducing even some of the high sugar content fruits and substituting them for something like a Granny Smith apple, which has a lower glycemic index. But if you're at that point, we can help you with more of those specifics. So if you are going to have carbohydrates, you need to earn your carbs through activity. So fat as a fuel would be like diesel, right? Diesel is very fuel efficient. You just chug along, you go forever on a tank of diesel. I know I get almost 1,000 kilometers to like a $50 fill up on my TDI, my Jetta diesel. Whereas carbs are more like rocket fuel, burn fast and furious. So if you are exercising a lot, you've earned more carbohydrate intake. If you're a desk worker and you're sedentary, you have to really reduce, if not eliminate altogether, your carbs, or they will be stored inside you in the form of fat. So understand that you need to relate your carbohydrate intake to your activity levels. want to take a minute to talk about our essential supplements, or EatByDesign essential supplements. So, I understand that there's a whole functional, nutritional field out there where people who are suffering from chronic degenerative diseases may require these extensive nutrition protocols. It's not really the mandate in our office. We want to give you sort of what are the 3 critical ones that pretty much everyone in North America should be taking. So we know just because you live here with soil depletion and limited sunlight for parts of the year, you should be taking 3 things. First and foremost, especially in the winter months in Canada, vitamin D. And the magic number is between 4,000 and 5,000 international units per day. That would be a baseline level. So if you're taking a multivitamin, or if you're getting something from Shoppers Drug Mart, it might have 500 or 1,000 international units in it. It's not nearly enough. Therapeutic dose comes in around 4,000 to 5,000 international units a day. If your levels are low, and I would suggest you have them checked with a blood test. If they are low, you may need 10,000 for a time period. But vitamin D would be the top priority. Second to that, I would say omega-3 oils. So we talked about getting your healthy fats from your grass-fed beef and wild-caught fish. Unfortunately, we don't have the omega-3s available in most of our foods that we used to, so a lot of people are deficient. You should be supplementing with an omega-3 or a fish oil on a daily basis. And thirdly, I would say is a probiotic. So having a healthy probiotic that you take on a regular basis will really help your digestive system to assimilate nutrients as effectively as possible. So anyway, we have all these available here, and you may need things that are beyond these 3, but as a baseline, pretty much every person in Canada should be taking these 3 products regularly. Okay, as point number 9, all calories are not created equal. I think this is really, really important to understand, is that if you look at a 500 calorie bowl of Fruit Loops, so pour in a bowl, however many Fruit Loops equals 500 calories, and next to that you look at a large whole avocado, which might have 500 calories in it. Those 2 foods are not created equal. The avocado is full of healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, all sorts of nutrients. So for that 500 calories, you're getting lots and lots of good stuff, the stuff that you need. For the 500 calories from Fruit Loops, you're getting almost not a single nutrient. You're getting just sugar and food colorings. Right? So those foods are not created equal. So counting calories is really a way of the past. Now, if you're overdoing it on your calorie intake, you are going to gain weight. It's be hard to lose. But you need to understand that a calorie does not equal a calorie. Some foods are much more calorie efficient than others. I think the Fruit Loop and the avocado example is logical. So what can I eat, Doc? Well, people often get discouraged when we talk to them about all the things we want them to avoid, because we're usually telling them at EatByDesign, stop eating all the things you love, right? If you're zipping into Tim Hortons, you're going to get a bagel or a donut or a muffin. At home in the morning, you might have a muffin or bagel or whatever, cereals, pastas. These are the things you need to avoid. But you can eat loads and loads of delicious, healthy foods. First and foremost, every meal should be based on a protein. What size protein? About the size of your palm. Around the protein, replace the grains, the pasta, with vegetables, as many as you want, loads and loads of vegetables, with healthy fats. So you can put grass-fed butter on top of your vegetables, melted over. You eat these meats that have that are high in healthy fat contents. Use avocados and these types of things. Have some olives. Add healthy fats. You need more and more healthy fats for nutrients and for satiety. It's the biggest place where people break down. If people are trying to make changes and they're trying to reduce their simple carbohydrate intake, with like reducing their grains, they're probably often not adding enough healthy fats in order to be full enough to be able to maintain the discipline on their new nutritional eating. So a meal is a meal is a meal. Here is an example day. So a breakfast could be an egg omelet, cheeses, veggies, bacon. Lunch could be leftover roast from the night before with vegetables, and dinner could be taco burgers. You're not going to have bread on that. There's a different recipe, but you can get that if you ask me for it. With guacamole, salsa, asparagus, and a salad. That would be a great meal. Here's another day. Why not for breakfast have coconut shrimp and sauteed vegetables? Have the leftover taco burgers for lunch the next day. Have lasagna, lamb lasagna and salad for dinner that night. So quite often in the mornings, my breakfast is not toast or pancakes or any of that cereals. It's never that. It's usually leftover dinner from the night before. I might have a chicken breast and vegetables for breakfast, or a bit of our pastured pork roast with some root vegetables. Why not? A meal is a meal is a meal. Let's get out. Let's think outside of the box. Let's not keep yourself pigeonholed into, well, breakfast is cereal or a bagel, and lunch is a sandwich, and then dinner is my meat and my vegetables. Have a protein with vegetables and healthy fat at every meal, regardless of the meal. All right, so take action. If you want to get the manual that summarizes the things we talked about tonight and the recipes, please reply to this email and request it from me. So my email, my personal email is the best way to get that. It's Craig Dingman. It's just my name, C-R-A-I-G, Dingman, @gmail.com. And if you reply to me requesting those things, I will send them to you. If you don't ask for it, I'm not going to send them on to you. Decide how much you want to move forward. So don't throw a grenade in your kitchen. Don't try and make all these changes. Pick one or two things that we talked about tonight to change. And then as you go through this process, you'll add one thing here, another thing there, and before you know it, you will have made some radical changes. If you need more help or accountability, just ask me. I love talking about nutrition. This has been a huge journey for me, and I've really done a lot of work here. So I'd love to help you with this. We've got lots of resources to help support nutritional changes. They will help you with your healing process. So I want to leave you right there. Take action and ask for help. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.